Network Entertainment.
You are leaning into, or you are a people pleaser because you want to be
Mhm.
dependable, you want to be there for them. So, what do you think that actually where that stems from?
Um, when I took a step back, I look at mostly my, of course, diba, my childhood, where basically I didn't really have a lot of friends. I
Mm.
can point to a lot of factors why, but basically, I thought that my interest, quote unquote, who I actually wasn't really appealing to people. So I didn't really have friends. So when eventually, of course, there would be one or two people who would still, like come up to you and want to get to know you. I found myself wanting to adjust to what they want me to be to keep them around.
Hey, in this episode, I'm on a coaching call with Iko. During this call, Iko shares how he has a tendency to adjust to his partner, so much so that he loses himself in the relationship. Now, he's trying to learn how to grow out of it and learn more about relationships and even his own individuality. However, they're still worried that he might fall back into the same pattern. Let's dive in. Hi, Iko. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay naman today.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for granting me the time to be with you
Mm-hmm.
and to coach you this for this episode. So, tell me, what is going on in your relational space right now?
Actually, right now, I am dating someone. It's hard to put a label nowadays because of how convoluted the dating scene is in the dating terms. But what we agreed on is niligawan ko siya.
Mm.
So I'd like to think eventually that we will become official if everything goes right. Ayun,
So
that's where I am right now.
your intention
Mhm.
is eventually you will end up in a relationship with this person that you're courting.
Yes, hopefully.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it. You can continue. What else do you want to say about that?
Um, ano lang naman, siguro it took me a lot to get to this point na I would actually want to be in a relationship with someone. Basically, I told you about it a bit before while we were still setting up.
Mhm.
But the whole 2023, I was single, and basically it was after a breakup.
Mm.
And basically, when you come out of a long-term relationship, you kind of want to go crazy, for the lack of a better word.
Mm.
So, I dated around, and I I really think for the first few months at the very least, I wouldn't say it was destructive for me, but it was doing a lot of bad in the sense na it was painfully obvious that I was still getting over, of course, my previous relationship, and also some, I guess, leftover relationship trauma also from relationships before that.
Okay.
So
So
yun, I think the journey as a whole leading up to this point in terms of dating has been really challenging, but also, I take it for what it is, and I wouldn't be where I am right now without going through all of that stuff.
okay. So what I'm hearing from you is that in 2023 you were single for the whole year, and
Yep.
because you got out of this relationship and it was a bad breakup, like you mentioned. What happened in that breakup, if I may ask?
Well, actually, the breakup itself, I'd like to think it wasn't bad. It's what happened after,
Hmm.
because at least on my end, okay. So we quote unquote tried to be friends a little bit after the breakup, as I feel a lot of people try to do, and it didn't. Of course, it didn't go well. Kasi based on my kumbaga evaluation of what happened, she became way too familiar. And she was telling me things that I didn't want to hear. And when I consulted friends about it, I shouldn't have to hear in the first place.
Familiar in what sense?
And uh okay, I'm not really sure what I can say in this
Well, I
recording, but
mean, like you meant.
basically,
I'm guessing. I'm sensing this is something that you don't want to hear it.
Yeah, basically it was about her dates and what's been happening with her with other guys.
Mm. So how would
So
that
so it was
feel
kind of
for
weird.
you?
Mm-hmm.
Like when she would tell you, you
It.
guys were friends, you
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
she would talk to you about these dates that she's going on. How did that feel
Mm-hmm.
for you knowing that she's confiding in you about these things?
I guess okay. On one end, it felt nice to know that she still depended on me despite the breakup. But on the other end, for me, it just got to the point where it was really weird, and I'm not really sure if she understood that she was hurting my feelings. And of course, I didn't tell her at first, but I could only take so much. So after a while, I told her that, hey, this is really bothering me.
Mm.
I know we're trying to be friends, but I'd like to think that that should still come with the consideration that we're still exes.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, she took accountability naman, but after that, we really didn't. Siguro that was the last time that we tried to be friends. After that, we didn't really talk that much anymore.
Mm. So you mentioned earlier that when she would confide in you, not recent really, but it was more of like when she would confide in you, you were like you like to be felt like you could still be depended on with these
Mhm.
things. But how did that
Yeah.
feel like to know that you could be dependent, um, or that she could depend on you? How did that make you feel?
Okay, so actually, I've come to terms with the fact that I'm trying to work on it. That I have a really, really bad savior complex,
Mm.
and yeah. So basically, whenever I feel useful, whenever I feel that um, yun nga, when someone confides in me, when someone thinks of me as someone to go to when they're having a hard time, that really constituted a big part of my self-worth. And I realize now, of course, how bad it is. Pero, ayun, at the time, it, I guess, that aspect of it, the fact that she could still depend on me, really helped me in a sense, I guess, if
Mm.
that makes sense. Because um, with generally with most of my past relationships, I have this thing where uh I'm not sure if it's petty, but I want to be the best. Ganun. Gets ba?
Mm.
Siguro, we didn't end up together, but I'm the standard. Parang may ganun akong really bad mindset now that I think about
Yeah.
it. But yeah.
So okay, so you're saying that you have this kind of savior complex when it comes to relationships, that you
Mhm.
want to be the best, you want to be they you want them to depend on you and show that you're dependable, and
Mhm.
that yeah, it's like that you'll be there for them. So I'm wondering if that is also the reason why you wanted to stay friends with your ex after that breakup.
Yeah. I'd like to think so. That's why I agreed on it. And siguro, 'di ba, when you're in the heat of the moment, yun nga, kasi basically, just to give a quick background, we ended things because of things in our futures that weren't ever gonna make us compatible.
Mm.
Ganon. Without diving too deep into it, it was things that were out of our control, and we both decided that it would be best to part ways.
Mm.
And so, when you end a relationship like that, you'd like to think there's no bad blood. There's really no reason to
Mhm.
completely cut them off. During the heat of the moment, while it was happening. So that's why I feel like I thought that I'm doing the right thing by being friends with her, and by giving her someone to to lean on, ganun. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so now, with the wanting to be
Mm-hmm.
having that savior complex, that there's a
Mm-hmm.
possibility that you are leaning into, or you are a people pleaser because you want to be
Mm-hmm.
dependable, you want to be there for them. So, what do you think that actually where that stems from?
Um, when I took a step back, I look at mostly my, of course, diba, my childhood, where basically I didn't really have a lot of friends. I can point to a lot of factors why, but basically I thought that my interest, quote unquote, who I actually wasn't really appealing to people. So I didn't really have friends. So when eventually, of course, there would be one or two people who would still, like come up to you and want to get to know you. I found myself wanting to adjust to what they want me to be to keep them around. Because of course, I didn't want to not have friends, of course. So I I did that almost I did that without noticing it. And siguro a large part of it is also at a young age I didn't really feel confident about who I was, and I was still figuring out what I wanted to be. Of course, until ngayon. But yeah, basically I kept on doing that to the point that honestly I couldn't really point to one solid idea of who I was. So I just kept doing it. I just kept adjusting. And with that last relationship with my ex, it led to a lot of problems because basically I feel as if I didn't communicate a lot of things for the sake of adjusting to her, which led to a lot of problems then that we had to work through. But basically, yeah, deep down, I think it's just that, like adjusting to fit to what I think people want me to be.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from what you said, and of course, that is something that's intense to begin with, because I hear you saying, for one thing, you didn't find yourself appealing growing up or as a kid, so much so that you would mold yourself in the way that your friends will find you appealing. And so moving forward into your adulthood, the same thing seems to be happening again in terms of relationships, where you would adjust so that, or you wouldn't actually bring things up. I'm assuming, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, it's like, is it to keep the peace, to make sure they're happy? What is it that keeps you from, what is it that kept you from opening up, speaking about things that you want to talk about?
Hey, it's Stan.
It's Ro,
Chino,
Emil,
And along with Rowan ASH, we are the Wrestling Podcast. We are the longest running weekly episodic Filipino wrestling podcast.
Each week, we talk about the latest happenings in pro wrestling. We give you takes from perspectives honed from years in the wrestling business and syempre as fans.
if you want someone to help process the feels about the different ganaps from WWE, AEW, NJPW, Impact, and more each week, you'll know what to do.
Tune in to the Wrestling Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever you get your podcasts.
I think generally one side of it is yun nga, what you said, keeping the peace. Generally, when I was like 18, 19, I wasn't very confrontational. Ngayon, I think I'm a bit better na I bring up things when I feel like we need to talk about it. But before, I was really bad with it. Yun nga, to keep the peace, to make sure that everything is quote unquote going right. Ganon. And what I didn't notice, I guess, was the eventual toll it was gonna take on me and on our relationship. And it's something I had to learn the hard way. Wherein, of course, if we keep adjusting, if we don't really express ourselves, I had this thing where instinctively I would just pile up yung feelings ko, and then it just exploded one time, which was really bad. But yeah, mostly it was to keep the peace, and also it was the fact that I was really bad with confrontation. I was even worse before.
It's true that, confrontation it's not easy at all, like, period. And so I totally hear you when you say that, confronting someone, addressing a conflict, a potential conflict with your partner, you know, that's something that many of us will avoid. But I want to ask you, how would it feel if you decided to not sweep things under the rug? Like, just to think about like bringing it up, what feelings come up for you when you think about that?
Um, well, actually, now as a whole, I think I do bring it up as soon as I can. Uh, I've found that generally, maybe to a fault, sometimes I over rationalize how I feel.
How so?
So, um, basically, kunyari, diba, there's a conflict. Then the first thing I would ask myself is, sino bang mali talaga sa sitwasyon na to? Where basically it was a way for me to invalidate how I felt. Kasi diba kunyari, instinctive feeling, I feel angry. But then I tell myself, take a step back. Well, what's happening? And then basically I would find myself just really invalidating how I feel a lot of times. And also, my conclusion would always be a lot of times, nakasalanan mo yan, so wag mo sabihin sa kanya. Ganun. So ganun yung thought process. I say I'm better now kasi with my current partner, we both made it clear to both of ourselves that of course we want to be open with each other. We want to express our feelings. And so whenever kunyari there's an instinctive feeling of kunyari may galit, there's something to quote unquote fight about, we lay it out and talk about it properly and see what we can do about it. Parang ganun. Whenever we have a potential conflict, at least for me, I like to ask, or she likes to ask, so what can you do about it to address the issue? So, ayan.
So what I'm hearing is from your previous experiences or even with your previous relationship, like things would pile up, your emotions would pile up to the point where there's gonna be one significant moment na sasabog ka.
Yeah.
And then
it did.
yeah. And so now though, when you are communicating with this person that you're dating, you're seeing this more of like, how can we fix this, instead of your previous mindset of thinking sinong mali.
Yeah. I came across this quote that said like, when we have a conflict, I'd like to think that it's not me versus you, it's me and you versus the problem.
Right.
So that's what I try to one, preach, and also what I try to practice now.
Are there moments in time now like you feel angry? Do you allow yourself to feel that anger?
Maybe even to a fault. I know. Hindi naman to completely about the relationship, but as a general rule, I always tell people like, ako, I don't like running away from my feelings kasi alam ko na mahahabol naman ako. Kasi diba, like you get tired of running and eventually mahahabol ka ng feelings mo. So I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but I let myself feel my emotions, maybe to a fault. So maybe like 1 or 2 days, you just catch me doing nothing and just absorbing everything I'm going through. Ganun.
What thoughts go through your mind? For example, if you are feeling angry and you have these 2 days to yourself, 1 to 2 days to yourself, what are the kinds of thoughts that come up in your head?
Sorry, would you like to kumbaga put this in the context of my relationship with my partner now, or not necessarily naman?
It can be, yeah. Ideally with your partner now, or it can be even everyday life when something triggers your anger. Tapos bigla, you need like a couple days to cool off. Whichever one is more significant of an experience, we'll go with that one. Yeah.
Kasi with relationships, or with my current relationship with my partner now, yun nga, when we talk about things, there's at least the conclusion of how are we gonna deal with this. So generally, for me, the fact that there's a resolution, that's enough for me to sort of hindi naman kumbaga hayaan na lang, but more of okay, we're doing something to fix it, so I'm content with that. With kunyari siguro in my daily life, when something doesn't go my way, that's when it's really bad for me, I guess. What goes on in my head, um generally, a lot happens where basically kunyari, 'di ba, there's one thing that happened na sabihin natin per se I failed an exam, kunyari lang. And then what happens is I look back to the other times that I failed an exam, and parang blame myself na in kasi like you didn't put in enough work, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And basically at the end of that time, this happened recently, but I get to a point where I'm just like, bro, you gotta fix your life. Like I say that to myself, and then it's like a restart button for me to. Of course, it's still there. The anger, the hurt, it's still there. But generally, I'm like, you gotta fix your life.
Well, the thing about anger, it's absolutely, it's an emotion. It's something that we all feel, and so it's something that we don't have to be afraid of feeling. Processing it, yes, is important. But also, well, specifically in your relationship or in this, well, as you're dating your partner, how does your process go? Like when you're thinking about when you're upset with them, what goes through your mind? Do you take like a step back? Do you take space from them? Or do you want to address it completely kaagad?
I think kaagad kasi that is what we agreed on. Like yun nga, at the start of our relationship, we both said no, we'd like this to be a relationship where basically we're free to say what to express our feelings and process it together. So as a whole, with relationships, whenever one of us feels upset, when one of us feels sad, we say it agad. But siguro where the struggle is the act of processing. Kasi 'di ba, just because kunyari nagalit sa akin yung partner ko, sinabi niya, that doesn't make it go away naman, 'di ba, that exact moment. So the act of processing that emotion, that conflict, is a learning experience for us, I guess. Kasi relatively, we're still new. We're still a new couple. Yung niligawan ko pa siya. And it's something that we're trying to learn about ourselves and also each other. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier saying that, well, yes, this is something that you want to discuss, especially with you adjusting to your partner. And this is one way that I'm seeing that you are adjusting to your partner, where it's in a good way, because you're adjusting also in the way that you react to certain situations. You don't hide away from whatever it is that you want to bring up. How can you stay grounded, I guess, in that practice of, wanting to show up better for your partner where you don't abandon yourself?
Well, I think as a general rule naman, diba, with relationships, of course, there is a healthy level of adjustment. It's about learning the way, it's about coming to terms with how you want to be loved and communicating that to them, and also learning how they want to be loved and trying to show it into practice. So I think in terms of adjusting in the context of a relationship, that's about, for me, as healthy as it could get. More than that, then I think I would fall into the trap again of what I did before, which was adjusting too much to the point of really, not being comfortable with myself and not being sure of quote unquote who I am. Yun nga, diba, I told you I get lost in relationships, so what I've noticed before. And what I've found is me get quote unquote getting better with that is a large chunk of it is me finding my individuality and being proud of myself. You know, kasi basically for the large chunk of my life, I felt that I was doing things that hindi naman sa hindi ko gusto. Pero I would be lying if I said that a large chunk of it wasn't because this is what my father wants or this is what my family wants, ganun. And 2023, I just got off a breakup. Sabi ko, I want to do things that I've never done before. So I picked up a lot of hobbies. I went into radio, which was really quite honestly on a whim. And to this day, I feel that it was one of the biggest factors of me just finding out who I really am this past 2023, which I feel was a really crucial year for my growth. And, you know, I'm just trying to extend that energy into 2024. It hasn't been easy, you know, it's not all ups. There's been a lot of downs this year. And I get caught up in, kumbaga, comparing them. But I'd like to think, as a whole, I'm getting better with, you know, that aspect of not adjusting too much.
Mm-hmm. But I still hear that there is still that worry that eventually might get to that point where you're adjusting too much. Is there a particular situation where you feel like you might compensate in the way that benefits your partner more than you? Because maybe this feeling of yun nga, you don't want to stir things up too much.
Yeah, we had a quote-unquote fight recently. Okay, it was. I'm not gonna say quote-unquote. It was a fight.
Okay, so it was a fight.
Basically, kasi, I'll admit it, I made a really bad joke and it hurt her feelings. And I acknowledge that, but also, I was also very honest with her. That's also how it started with my ex na, okay, it wasn't an offensive joke, but it was a weird joke, I guess, for my ex. She didn't like it and she was really, really mad. And I point to that as like the point where I said to myself na, okay, so I need to adjust.
How did that make you feel, like knowing that upset your ex at the time?
Because I was so used to adjusting, I didn't really think much of it. I was just like, okay, I'll adjust. Ganun lang siya at the
Pero
time.
usually, diba, they're usually, even if it's a knee-jerk reaction, it's connected to a particular emotion. Usually the things that we do, it's tied to a particular emotion, especially out of a reaction, right? So if you can think on those moments when your ex or even your partner expresses like that they're angry, that they're super mad at you, what is that feeling? What is that emotion that comes up when you are in that moment with them?
As a people pleaser, yun nga, as you said, I think generally in that moment, my mind goes straight to how can I make this better for her, you know?
Okay.
Which yun nga, looking at it now, for me, it's well, part of it is good, but yun nga, I tend to invalidate my feelings a lot, which is yun nga, part of the things that I'm trying to quote unquote better myself at today.
Okay. Iko, if I may stop you right there. You mentioned that you invalidate your own feelings. In every question that I've actually asked you how you feel, you have never named an emotion. So it's something, I'm not saying that it's a learning curve for you, I think.
Yeah.
And so I feel like in this sense, when you say you invalidate your feelings, what I am sensing from you is that you want to rationalize the way that you behave, the way that you act in the people pleasing ways, even if you have done, actions to help you become better at that, for you to find your individuality, for you to speak up for yourself, which are all great, and that is great improvement for you. But I think it's also important for you to acknowledge your feelings, even if, let's say, you're angry. What does that tie down to? Why are you angry? If you say it's because something didn't go your way, well then, why am I so upset about this? It's kind of like, I feel like there's more curiosity to be digging deeper into your own emotions instead of just rationalizing, which I totally understand. A lot of us do. A lot of us will therapize ourselves. We will read all the content necessary. But I think it's important for you to also not be afraid to feel the emotion, tap into that emotion instead of just rationalizing. So maybe, and we're already at the 30-minute mark, for you to move forward, if you want to do another session, let's say, like if I ever ask you like how you feel, like really take a moment, like know how it feels in your body or something, because that's something that we weren't taught. We weren't taught how to be in touch with our emotions. We weren't taught how to feel that emotion in our body also. And that eventually could help you process better, be more curious about where that's coming from. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But if I may ask, like in
Sure.
digging deeper, what's the line between digging deeper and over rationalizing it?
don't think too much about like just don't think too much about the logic behind it. Emotions and logic, they don't they don't go well together, because acting out of emotion is completely different. That's why you can imagine, diba, if you are in an argument with someone and someone is very emotional, if you react in a logical way, hindi yan papasok sa kanila na parang, oh, there's a logical solution. They're in their feelings, diba? So for you to dig into your emotions talaga, just be curious. Like, one thing that you can do is, if you're feeling triggered, you have fear, you have feeling of shame or of guilt. Sit with that. Sit with, okay, I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling shameful for something I just did. Feel that, like, observe where that's felt most in their body. Usually my sensation, diba? Usually there's a sensation, especially for me, if I feel like I'm scared. The feeling for me would be in my stomach, in my chest, in my throat. Like, just acknowledge, and like those feelings, just want you to feel them and understand them, because without you understanding, you'll just go through the same cycle. Even with all of the rationalizing, if you don't acknowledge the feeling, where it's coming from, where it's rooted also, that's just gonna keep coming up. And an important thing for you is just to move through that emotion. Move through that emotion, be curious, be kind to yourself, which is something that, a lot of us are not very good at as well. So yeah, be kind to yourself as you're going through that. And hopefully when you have another instance with your partner where you get into a fight, you can probably try and ground yourself, and also realizing, like, okay, where is this coming from right now? You can acknowledge also, okay, I'm feeling really annoyed. Don't be afraid to also pause that argument if ever it's like it's getting too much na, it's getting too intense na. Like, don't be afraid to try and just like give yourself time to calm down and then circle back to it. So all of that makes sense to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does.
Okay, so
It's one of those things that you, I think deep down that but you have to hear from other people to confirm.
yeah, that's what coaching does. It's like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how many books you've read, how much content you've digested. to try and validate the way that you feel and to validate the way that, this is how you grew up pala. Like for you to process it, it's a completely different arena. And that's why coaching is important, because you want someone to not necessarily, it's not brutal honesty, but it is observation on someone's behaviors and someone's actions, if anything contradicts whatever it is that they want and what's holding them back. So there, I hope that there's something that you were able to take away from this session. And so Iko, thank you very much again for giving me the time.
Thank you so much too.
And I hope you have the great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.